Lorewalk with me, and imagine for a moment that you are a Pandaren, living in the ancient days of Pandaria. Ever since your village was burned, field and work is all you've known. Usually, your Mogu masters allow you to keep a meager portion of your harvest. But in recent months, things have been different. The Mogu demand 100% of your yield. They care nothing for the hungry, the weak, or the sick. It's as if they are stockpiling for something. They have subjugated your people for generations and used them to uphold their decadent imperialism. They believe that the entirety of Pandaria is theirs to rule by divine right. They do not understand harmony. They do not understand the simple pleasure of a life well lived. All they know is strength and conquest. In an attempt to feed your starving and enslaved family, you hide a single pawful of grain from the Mogu quartermaster. It does not go unnoticed.
What are you doing? You will pay for this treachery with your life. Take him to the palace.
Where'd you get that weapon from? Your sister?
You were brought before the Emperor to plead, not for your own life, but for the life of your mate, who was such a good cook before the food ran out, and your cubs, who are still too young to understand why their lives are defined by toil and hardship.
To steal from the Mogu is punishable by death, but I am not unmerciful. Your pathetic litter will face no consequence, and you will serve your emperor atop the serpent's spine. They will certainly have dire need of you. Ha 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 ha.
You've heard legends of the terrors that lie beyond the serpent's spine, a massive wall built by your forefathers under the Mogu lash. But no Pandaren you've ever known has lived long enough to remember them. The Mogu are formed for battle. The slaves are armed with farming tools and weak leather, obvious cannon fodder. You are afraid, frantically searching the mist for any signs of what is to come. Then, you hear them. The swarm has arrived. Every 100 years, the Mantid swarm explodes from the great Kaipari trees of Pandaria. They send their young by the thousands to throw themselves against the serpent's spine. The smell of blood and Kaipari amber sap saturates the air. And when the swarm is ended, when the bodies of young Mantid, Pandaren, and Mogu have piled themselves at the base of the wall, their empress does not call it tragedy. She calls it progress. The weak have been culled, and now her surviving warriors may return to their trees, having earned their place in Mantid society. Each returning veteran strengthens the swarm, perfecting it for the next assault. And there is always a next assault. On the surface, the Mantid seem to be a mindless race of warrior bugs, carrying out the will of their empress with complete disregard for their own lives. But they have mastered the art of warfare, applying tactical thought and planning to what would otherwise be violent chaos. They employ squadrons of sappers and suicidal bombardiers. They sacrifice themselves without a second thought, for every Mantid is simply a raindrop in the typhoon of their magnificent empress's design. Her sweet song telepathically reaches every single Mantid soldier, driving them to battle, to near certain death. From the moment they emerge from their clutches, they have only one desire: to rend the flesh of her enemies. It is the individual strength of each member of the Mantid army that makes it so threatening. Mantid culture revolves around the amber sap of the Kaipari trees. Venerated amber smiths mold the sap to build razor-sharp blades and spears, near impenetrable armor for their commanders and siege machines, and structures that are not built at nature's expense, but rather exist in harmony alongside it. Their technological ingenuity is impressive, as they've studied the sonic resonance of amber crystals, adapting them into handheld weapons capable of obliterating their targets into bloody orange mist. Mantid physiology allows them to communicate at very high frequencies beyond the comprehension of any other sentient races. They've designed hypersonic resonance crystals that allow them to communicate over great distances, informing the entire swarm in an instant when to advance and when to hold fast. Theoretically, they could also tell them when to retreat, but retreat is a word not found in the Mantid vocabulary. It is said that no creature has ever set foot on Mantid land without their knowledge, as the delicate sensitivities of their sonic resonance towers allow them to detect even the slightest disturbance. They are also extremely talented in the art of poison making, developing acids that are capable of melting both Mogu stone and Pandaran flesh to the bone. When the Mogu controlled Pandaria, they struck against the Mantid when they were at their weakest, in an attempt to interrupt the cycle. Mogu armies cut down the Mantid in their hives, smashing the unhatched clutches of eggs that were meant for the next swarm. Chaos engulfed the otherwise tactical Mantid. And from that chaos emerged Korven. The splintered and frantic Mogu that managed to escape Korven's onslaught would never forget the suffering that he visited upon them in the amber depths of Mantives. For his actions, Korven was revered by the Kalaxi, a word that in the ancient language of the Mantid means priest. The Kalaxi make up the highest caste of Mantid society. Their only wish is to protect the cycle of Mantid life, and had it not been for Korven, the cycle that has sustained the Mantid for untold millennia would be lost forever. To celebrate his bravery, they allowed him the honor of planting a new sacred tree. He called her Kaipari Zar, and when her roots were still fresh, he was named the first Mantid Paragon. The Kalaxi priesthood bestowed upon him his second name, the name that every other Paragon would come to fear and respect: Korven the Prime. Korven was moved by this veneration, but he knew that it would only be a matter of time before the Mogu tried again to break the cycle, and he could not bear the thought of what would happen to his beloved Empress if he were not there to protect her. So, he devised a means of preserving himself in Kaipari amber, only to be awakened when his people needed him most. Over the cycles, more Paragons would be preserved, and the Kalaxi labored on, unaware that the greatest threat to their all-important cycle was still lying dormant beneath the veil of eternal blossoms.
You should kill them all. You must kill them. Pluck their wings. Leave them broken.
By the time we set foot into the dread wastes in the Mists of Pandaria expansion, Mantives was already consumed by shadowy energies. For the Empress Shek'Zir had been beset by the Shah of Fear, who was poisoning her mind, and by extension, the entirety of Mantid society. The normally sweet song of the Mantid Queen had turned fearful and maddened, and the great Kaipari trees, that have stood as the foundation to Mantid civilization since the days of the Troll and Akir wars, were slowly succumbing to rot and decay. Shek'Zir unleashed her swarm 10 years too early, and the Shadowpan, now dealing with the re-emergence of the Shah across the continent, were caught entirely off guard. Throughout the countless cycles, infighting had never been seen among the Kalaxi, but when Klaxi Vatik and Adjunct Krizat are discovered at each other's throats, the unprecedented scope of this internal conflict is revealed. The Calaxi are rebelling against their corrupted empress. Through this rebellion, we come to understand the true purpose of the cycle. The cycle is not about conquest. If it were, then the Calaxi would have no problems accepting the orders of their crazed empress. I think that Kilrook the Wind Reaver put it best, so I'll leave you with a quote from the short story Death from Above by Robert Brooks.
I've heard plenty about your war. The Alliance, the Horde, two equally useless sides fighting over insignificant goals. I suspect you don't see it that way. Your war could last 1,000 years, and it would be but a small river feeding into the ocean of the Calaxi's plans. Their will is to preserve the cycle. The purpose of the cycle is not death. Indeed, it is knowledge. Knowledge of you, knowledge of us. Battle is an efficient mentor. All creatures can achieve their potential only when the alternative is death. The Calaxi ensure that battle lasts as long as possible. It is in their interest to prolong each cycle, pressuring the lesser creatures as much as they can, without breaking them. Thus, the defenders will fight with all their skill, fearing that everyone they know and love stands on the brink of oblivion if they fail. Like and subscribe, or the fury of the or the fury of the swarm will descend upon you.